Not saying that any time is actually a good time for COVID-19, but damn, coach, really? Now? Who else could it be but me, your name, Louie T. Ball. To the 127th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Looking forward to today's episode. Lot to get to. We're going to have a long gym dropping session. It's going to act as a de facto in case you missed it. So we'll get to that. A lot of information because the season has ended and so many things are happening and the playoffs are upon us. And you could easily be distracted, especially if your team is involved in the postseason. You could have missed some of these things. So we'll talk about them on the podcast today. Also, want to talk about something my dad dropped on my melon yesterday, or it might have been the day before yesterday. We were talking, and he dropped the gem on my melon, so he made me go back and have to watch something. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show during garbage time. And of course, Wednesdays means social media maneuvers where you guys get to take over the podcast and you can ask whatever you like. Yeah. But, you know, I have to do this. Before we get into the gym dropping session, and we're going to talk about Kevin Stefanski and his COVID-19 positive test. And again, no time is a good time to test positive for COVID-19, but if you're Kevin Stefanski, you've navigated your way through 17 grueling weeks of NFL football and all the pitfalls that can come during the course of a season, especially this year in 2020 with everything going on. And you've even had a mini outbreak in Cleveland at one point, right at the end of the season. And somehow you managed to get through all the landmines and then boom, you step on one right at the end as the playoffs get here. That's got to be frustrating. But I'm going to tell you this. COVID-19 and contracting it sometimes and not contracting it is almost a bit of luck. You know, it's crazy because I still feel like if you're a coach, if you're a player, if you're a personnel staff member of one of these organizations, you have to do everything in your power to not put yourself in compromising positions. Now, again, it's so hard because you don't know. You really don't know. And I got a story to tell. So over this break, the reason I was home, we were going to go to Georgia for Christmas. That's what we normally do. And, you know, the numbers were getting outrageous down south. And I was like, you know, and my girl was like, yeah, we just... Look, we're not going anywhere. Not going to be out on the town like we normally are when we go down there for Christmas. We're just going to go to Georgia and to our friend's house and just sit in the living room. We can do that at home. So I was like, really valid point. Point taken. So we stayed home. But what also made that decision really easy to stay home is that we had another close call with COVID-19. And I talked about it earlier this year when COVID-19 hits a little too close to home. Well, it hit a little bit, and this one was a lot closer to home than the first time. So this was a much bigger scare than the last time. So my girl and my son go over to a friend's of ours house. And look, we don't have many friends in this area. As a matter of fact, we only have one. So they go over there during the day, and they kick it. And it's harmless. They don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere. We think they're safe. We know we're safe because we don't do anything. And we think they're safe because they don't do anything. And lo and behold, their daughter goes to their grandparents' house once a week. And the grandparents have a daughter that is 25-ish, let's say. She still lives at home. And she's one of those people that I'm going to live my life. You know, and look, I don't have any problems with that. So she's out living her best life. unfortunately, she's not taking the precautions that everyone else is. And this is the part that pisses me off. You do whatever you want. But the minute your actions start to affect me, now I have a problem. So she comes home and she's got all the tall tale signs of COVID-19, but doesn't tell anybody. She's got the chills, lost a sense of smell and taste, all of the good stuff, low grade fever, doesn't feel well at all, but doesn't tell anybody. So the little girl goes over there to spend time with her grandparents. All of them get COVID-19, including the little girl. So she brings that back home to her parents, and my girl and my son happen to be over there, and she has COVID-19, and her parents don't know it. So her daughter just keeps complaining of being tired and fatigued. So she's like, you know what? This is abnormal. I'm going to have her tested. And she had COVID-19. So on Christmas Eve, we get a phone call. Hey, just wanted to let you know, so-and-so has COVID. Our daughter has COVID. You might want to go and get tested. Well, that pretty much put our entire Christmas Eve plans, Christmas, and all the days following on hold until we got those test results back. And look, she was in close proximity with the mom and the little girl. Our son was in close proximity to the little girl. My assumption is we all got COVID. They came home. They didn't know. I was kissing my girl. My son was in the bed with us. I thought everybody in the house had COVID. So, and your mind is so powerful. It plays tricks on you. You ever heard the song? My mind's playing tricks on me. Dum, 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 dum. Your mind is a powerful tool, man. I've always talked about this on the podcast, how if you're telling yourself you can't do something, you might as well quit right then and there. Like if you're running and you tell yourself, I'm too tired, I gotta stop, then just stop. Because your mind is gonna quit. Once your mind tells your body, I'm quitting, you're done. So that's why it's mind over matter. That's why you hear that all the time. Your mind is powerful. If you tell yourself over and over again you can do something, and you start to believe it, you start to believe it. I remember one time I told myself over and over again, I feel sick, I feel sick. I didn't want to go to school. And I kept doing that for like an hour straight, and literally I felt nauseous. There was nothing wrong with me, but I felt like I had to vomit. There was nothing wrong with me. Your brain is so powerful. Anyway, I digress. So, once I hear that, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We've done everything possible to stay clean, steer clear of this thing. And you're telling me that's how we're going to end up getting got? So every little thing that happens now, oh, we got COVID. Like my chest started to tighten up a little bit. It had nothing to do with, COVID. It was just, I ran outside a couple of times with no shirt, with no jacket on or whatever. It's freezing outside to go to the trunk, trying to be slick to wrap some gifts that I had stashed in the car or whatever. And so the next morning I woke up, my chest was a little tight. Nothing major, but in my mind, chest tightness. I got COVID. My son the next morning, he loves to be cold. He doesn't like to be hot. So he's downstairs eating breakfast and he's like, Daddy, I'm cold, and he's shivering. I'm thinking, he's got the chills. He's got COVID. Every little thing that happened, we got COVID. So lo and behold, we get him tested first. He's negative. Whoa. Big bullet dodged there. So then everybody else gets tested. We're all negative. And I'm like, huh. And, the friend of ours that they went over to her house, she ended up losing sense of smell and taste. So she knew she had COVID. She got tested anyway, but she knew she had COVID. And so I'm like, there's no way you went over there and was talking to her for like 7 hours and you didn't get COVID. But she didn't. None of us did. Sometimes it's just a roll of the dice. It's crazy with this COVID thing. I tell you, man, it's really wild. So what I'm telling you is Kevin Stefanski could have done everything right. And his wife could have went somewhere and hung out with people that she thought was safe. And somebody could have had it and not known they had it. And then she brings it home to her husband. I don't know how it happened. Obviously, I don't know what's going on in the Stefanski household or whatever. But for me, if I were a player, coach, whatever, and we're just cutting everybody off until the season's over. I'm sorry. I can't have any contact with anybody on the outside. Your life stops. Sorry, honey. Your life stops. And my life has to stop. This is what's most important. This is what makes the money in the house. This is what keeps the lights on. This is what provides for us. So we got to make sure that we do everything in our power. If I'm preaching to my players and everybody else that they've got to stay safe, I've got to be the one that leads this team and has, and sets the example for everyone else. Speaking of which, I did all of that. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I already kind of started off this gem dropping session. I already told you it's going to act as a de facto in case you missed it. So we're going to start with Kevin Stefanski, Browns head coach, and 4 other staff members, all contracting COVID-19, are going to be out for the Steelers postseason game on Sunday night. That's supposed to be the final game of Wild Card Weekend, 8:15 Sunday night. That's unfortunate. The Browns have worked so hard to get to this point. They haven't been in the postseason since 2003, and this is what happens. If this isn't some Cleveland Browns shit, then I don't know what else is. I really don't know. But it's tough. However, I understand how this can happen, but I still don't like it. And the Browns' entire organization has been tested, players included, no positive tests. They're going to continue to test them, obviously. The NFL has a situation on its hands. If any more positive tests arise, like let's say 3 or 4 guys test positive, they're going to have to postpone this game. They can't play it. Right now, they're on track to play this thing. And just because Kevin Stefanski and a few other members of that coaching staff are out, the NFL doesn't give a shit. They've already shown that with the Broncos situation when they had no quarterbacks capable of playing, and they said, that's not our problem. Sorry. You guys got to still play the game. So they're not going to stop this game just because of the Browns, because if they did, they would have to then push back multiple postseason games. Like, if you push back this game, I can't say you can't, because I talked about this before the season started, that there's going to be a competitive advantage for other teams throughout the course of this season, that there are going to be situations that are unfair. It's one thing to have an unfair advantage or disadvantage in the regular season. Not really looking to do that in the postseason if you're the NFL. Like, you're trying to make the playing field as even as possible because these teams fought all year to get here. So I don't think they're going to do anything if they don't have to, obviously. And if it just remains that, Kevin Stefanski and a few of these other staff members have COVID and no one else does, and they did a really good job and were responsible with their contact tracers of not being in close proximity with one another, then they're going to go on with this game, and someone else is going to have to coach the team. I would assume whomever the assistant head coach, I would guess it would be Bill Callahan. That would be my guess, because he's been a head coach in the league multiple times. I don't know if he's one of the other staff members that contracted COVID-19, but I would assume, and I could be wrong here in assuming that the next guy up would be Bill Callahan, but because he's got head coaching experience multiple times over in this league, I would assume he'd be the guy that would be next up for the Browns. We'll see what happens, but that's just a tough situation. It's a tough spot to be in if you're the Browns. But I love Kevin Stefanski's I love his vibe right now. I love his mindset and his headspace, where he is, and the things that are coming out of his mouth right now. He's like, look, it is what it is. I can't change the rules, because he would love to have contact with his team from a remote location, home, right? But he can't. The NFL prohibits that from happening, and they should. I get it, because he could be watching a TV copy and be hearing some of the things that the announcers got from the other team, and that stuff is supposed to be said essentially in confidentiality. Now, they can use some of that stuff on the telecast, but that stuff's not going to be privy to the other team. So, you don't want them having contact with people that are on the sidelines. So I understand that, and they're not going to bend the rules for Kevin Stefanski. And he's like, yeah, I don't expect them to. I haven't even asked them to, and I'm not going to. This team, they know what we are. They know how we prepare, and they know how we play. So I expect them to go out and play like Cleveland Browns, whether I'm on the sidelines or not. Okay, touche. It still doesn't change the fact that their head guy, the guy that has led them for 16 straight games in 17 weeks, is not going to be on the field, on the sidelines with them, but and not even during the course of the week of practice. But you know, we'll see what happens. This is a lot of adversity for this Cleveland Browns team, and they've been through quite a bit of it this season. See if they can't overcome this. It'd be a hell of a story if they somehow were able to go to Pittsburgh and win without their head coach on the sidelines. We'll see what happens. It's a tough situation to be in, but seriously, not now, coach. Of all times, now? Wow. In case you missed it, Texans players did not want Earl Thomas on the team. Remember when Earl first got released and there was this immediate, rush to every fan base that needed a team, safety. Hey, we should sign Earl Thomas. And a lot of us, especially we needed a safety at the time, and Earl was out there. I was like, I want no parts of Earl Thomas. One, he's not the same Earl Thomas that he once was. And two, Earl's got a lot of shit with him, a lot of baggage. Earl is not a great teammate. You heard the Ravens player say that when he left. Remember, he got dismissed for punching a teammate in the face, okay? After he blew coverage at practice. He blew coverage at practice and got mad after his teammate was like, dude, what the hell? He got mad and punched him in the face. So he got dismissed from practice and ultimately got released from the team. And so he's not a good teammate. He's a hothead. He's got off the field issues, multiple issues. I don't need to go into that with, baby mama and some issues with other things. It's a lot that comes with Earl Thomas, okay? So I was like, I'm good. A lot of Washington fans like to ignore shit like that. I'm like, that's part of the reason we got a terrible culture, because you want every guy that's walking the streets that you think can play football. That's part of the reason we're in the predicament that we're in right now. If you're trying to change the culture, you don't want a guy like, Earl Thomas on your team. And apparently the Texans were like, look, I don't give a shit how bad we are. Remember, Bill O'Brien, and he did a really good job of destroying that organization. One of his last bad deeds was almost signing Earl Thomas. They brought him in, and they were going to bring him in, I should say. I think there was an issue with COVID, and he wasn't allowed to come in. And then I think they ultimately did bring him in, and I think the Texans players were like, we don't want his ass here. And I'm assuming J.J. Watt, some of the leaders on the team, spoke up and said, nah, we're good. We'll figure it out, or we'll just struggle with what we got. We don't want this guy. He's a cancer. Okay. I ain't mad. And I felt the same way in Washington. Like, I don't want this guy on our team. So, hey, at the end of the day, you can actually earn your way out of the league with poor behavior. Normally, if you're talented, you get ample opportunities. But at some point, the league draws the line. Maybe that line has been drawn on Earl Thomas. We'll see. Another offseason and teams get desperate. You don't hear his name in the media, and you don't hear his name in the news. Maybe someone will give him an opportunity. But it seems like at the safety position, much like the running back position, man, you could fall off a cliff quick, because whatever happened to Eric Berry? I remember him coming back. It was a great story, and he was playing well, and then Eric Berry was gone and got cut from the Chiefs, and he didn't even get a workout. I don't know, man. Safeties, they go quick. Anyway, I digress. In case you missed it, Atlanta Falcons to interview defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. And you know what I want to do? I want to take the time right now to go through all of the coaches right now that are getting looks from these teams, because I got a question yesterday, and while I'm at it, if you are out there and you're watching this podcast and you potentially want a comment answered, and if it's pertinent, don't just be typing in some garbage, because I'll just skip over it. But if you're out there, you want your comment read, you got two ways to get that done. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it's pertinent. All right, and when we get to social media maneuvers, I'll read it. And it can be pertaining to anything. college football, NFL, whatever. As long as it's pertinent, we'll talk about it. If you want to jump to the front of the line, super chats are the way to do it. So again, 2 ways. Either you can leave a comment in the comment section here in the live chat, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read, or you can super chat. That will jump you straight to the front of the line. With that said, Todd Bowles getting an interview from the Falcons. I always felt like he got a raw deal in New York with the Jets. You know, you go 10-6 with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. That's a really tough thing to do. He did it. And then he didn't have a quarterback that entire time, really. And I felt like if he was given one more year, he was going to turn things around. You know, that defense had talent. I felt like they had a chance to be competitive in that division. And I never really thought he got a chance to try to, you know, fix some things. So I'd like to see him get another opportunity, is essentially what I'm telling you. And I told you, if I were Atlanta, and I still don't think they're going to do this. I think they're going to go on the offensive route. But if I were Atlanta, I got enough offense. All you got to do is find a competent offensive coordinator, and you got all the weapons you need to be dynamic on that side of the football. I want a defensive-minded guy to come in and take what I have on defense and make it work. And so if I were the Falcons, Todd Bowles would be interesting to me. Robert Saleh would be interesting to me. Another guy that I've talked about, and I haven't heard his name boundied about yet, so I don't know if teams are really hot on his trail, but Matt Eberflus in Indianapolis would be a guy that I would be contacting to interview. And, you know, I see a lot of people were interested in Patrick Graham, who we'll talk about here in a second, the Giants defensive coordinator. But, you know, those would be some of the names that I would be really interested to talk to, because I would be looking for a defensive-minded guy if I were the Atlanta Falcons. But Todd Bowles, interesting name. I didn't expect it to come up. It has, and I'm happy for him. I hope he gets another opportunity in this league. I really do. Speaking of Todd Bowles and head coaching candidates, let's talk about all the guys that are getting a little bit of buzz, getting interviews, getting requests for interviews. Most of them, you'll see the trend here, are offensive coordinators. We talked about that on the last podcast, and we've talked about that numerous times on this show, that a lot of teams are looking for offensive-minded guys. Why? Because this is an offensive league. It's a passing league in particular, but it's an offensive-minded league. If you can score points, you can win games in this league, and everyone's looking for the next hot offensive-minded guy. So here are some names of some candidates that have arisen over the course of this season and have gotten a little bit more traction as we've gotten to the end of the season. Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith of the Tennessee Titans. I like him because he's not afraid to run it 35 times in a game if need be. That's a stark contrast to a lot of these guys who just run it to claim that they're keeping, you know, the defense honest and maybe set up a little bit of play action, but for the most part, a lot of these guys don't really want to run the football, even if they're having success. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've seen coordinators only run the football when they've got a big lead, but really they want to throw it. You know, I'm watching Sean McVay on Sunday in that game against the Cardinals, and they're having some success on the ground. And he did run it with his quarterback. I will give him that. So that was an extension of the run game, using the quarterback as an option there. But I thought they had some runs in the game, some good hits on the ground with the running backs. And, you know, there were times where Sean would just go, you know, 3 straight passes. And I'm like, why are you doing that? But that's how this league is set up, is that these coordinators, they want to throw it. Because usually you don't get a job running a football. You don't get a job. You don't get a look. You don't get a sniff as a coordinator because your offense is averaging 195 yards rushing per game. That's usually not going to get you a job. What's going to get you a job is if you take this quarterback that everybody thought was marginal at best, and now he's playing at a Pro Bowl-like level. That's what usually gets you a job. i.e. Ryan Tannehill, which is why Arthur Smith is being considered. But I like the fact that he's willing to run the football. Yep, he's got King Henry. Doesn't matter. A lot of these different offensive coordinators out here could have Derrick Henry, and they still wouldn't run the football as much as the Titans are running it. So Arthur Smith is very interesting, to say the least. And he's really creative with what he does with Ryan Tannehill, and I think he's a guy that is definitely, I think he's already had all 6 teams inquire about him and their vacancy. So he's a guy to look out for. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. I was 110% certain that this guy was going to be one and done as Panthers offensive coordinator and that he was going to get a job this offseason. I'm still hearing that people are apprehensive about his age. I'm like, did Sean McVay not put that to rest already? Like, if you think the guy is awesome, and reportedly, the only job he's interviewed for at this point is the Houston Texans job. And reportedly, he knocked the interview out of the park. I mean, absolutely killed it. Similar to the way McVay killed it in Los Angeles. And remember, the word out on the street was they were apprehensive. They didn't want to give him the job because he was too young. But the interview was so damn impressive that they had to give it to him. And I'm hearing a lot of the same things with Joe Brady in Houston. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. He's a savant. He's an offensive savant. He did it at LSU. He's been in the NFL with New Orleans already, so it's not like this guy doesn't have an experience. He just didn't have an experience as a play caller. Well, he got that at LSU last year, and it was a kind of a dual thing at LSU last year with Joe Burrow and that historic year at LSU. But then he gets the job this year under Matt Rule in Carolina, and I thought he did wonders with that offense with Teddy Bridgewater. And a couple of 1,000-yard receivers in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. So I think he's going to get a job, and I think it may ultimately be in Houston. That's a name to keep an eye on there in Joe Brady. Jason Garrett, offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. I did not expect to hear his name come up at all whatsoever for any of these vacancies. Now, he did a hell of a job in Dallas. I made fun of Redhead Jesus. I did. But to deal with Jerry's shit for, 7 years? And I think he had been in Dallas for like damn near 20 years as a player, as an assistant coach, and then as the head guy. To deal with Jerry's shit for as long as he did, that takes a lot. It takes a pretty damn good man to be able to do what he did for all those years with Jerry Jones as his owner. So I'm not a Jason Garrett fan. I'm not going to sit here and act as if I am. I'm not. But and the Giants offense was absolutely horrid this year, but can you blame Jason Garrett for that? Probably not. They didn't have any talent. Let's be honest with ourselves. They need a lot of stuff. Saquon goes down like week 3 or so, and they got no receivers out there except for, really, they got a couple of guys that are solid, but there's no number 1 wide receiver in sight in New York. You know, Darius Slayton, really good receiver. I like Sterling Shepard, but there's not a lot of talent. Evan Ingram catches the football when he feels like it. I think that Jason Garrett is solid, not worthy of a job, but the Chargers seem interested. They seem really, really interested. We'll see what happens there. Brian Daboll, Bills offensive coordinator. We've talked about him ad nauseum. He's been directly linked to that Chargers job, and I'm like, everybody's making a big deal about this Chargers gig because him and the general manager Tom Telesco went to high school together, and I'm like, were they really friends? Like, did you guys do any homework here, or are you just connecting false dots? Because, the media loves to connect false dots. So, I don't know. We'll see if he gets that job or not. But a lot of teams are interested in Brian Daboll, not just the Chargers. Eric Bieniemy, Chiefs offensive coordinator. We've talked about him on this podcast. We talked about him last year. We talked about him the year before that. We're talking about him again because at some point, this guy has to get a job, right? Everyone thinks it's this offseason. Well, everybody thought it was going to be last offseason, and a lot of people thought it was going to be the offseason before that. So I'm not here to make any assumptions, but every single team except, I think, the Jets have contacted and interviewed Eric Bieniemy already. So he's getting sniffs. Will he get any of these jobs is another question. And then finally, defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. He's a guy, I think he's getting a job. I'd be shocked if he ends up back in San Francisco as their defensive coordinator. Detroit has been a hot name, a link to Robert Saleh. I think Atlanta should be very interested in him as well. If you're looking for a defensive-minded guy, he's going to probably be at the top of a very short list of defensive coordinators that are going to get a sniff this offseason. So that's another name to look out for as well. So speaking of the Houston Texans, a lot of people think that Eric Bieniemy or Joe Brady, one of the two, are going to end up in Houston right now as the head coach. They hired their GM. All right, the first of the 7 vacancies to be filled in the NFL this offseason in terms of the general manager position is in Houston, where they hire ex-Patriots director of player personnel, Nick Caserio. Remember, this was the guy that the Texans wanted before. If you recall, when Bill O'Brien was sniffing around, and his name also came up when the Jets were looking for a GM, and they ultimately hired Joe Douglas. But this is a guy that the Texans had their eye on the entire time, and they wanted him as their GM. Remember last year, and the Patriots kind of blocked them then. Well, Nick Caserio gets the gig now, and it's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do, because if I'm the Texans, if I'm any of these teams with a GM opening and I got a head coaching opening as well, I want to hire the GM first so that he can hire the head coach. I want him responsible for the success of the head coach or the lack thereof. I need him to answer to that. I need him to pick his guy. I don't want any excuses. Oh, I inherited this guy. This isn't my guy. Let me hire my guy and I'll show you what I can do. No, you hire your guy so we can find out what you can do. So it's going to be interesting to see what Nick Caserio wants to do. He's supposed to be this really smart and intelligent football savvy guy. But we're going to find out what he decides to do. And I think his first big task, obviously, is going to be finding the next head coach of the Houston Texans. And that is a very important job and decision, because Deshaun Watson is unhappy right now. Very, very unhappy. You need to find him a guy that's going to reassure him that I'm going to come in here and we're going to win. You got to make your franchise guy feel like, I didn't make the wrong decision when I signed that extension an offseason ago. You got to make Watson feel like I made the right decision. Let's do this. So this is a big decision. Hope he gets it right. So speaking of Patrick Graham, and I talked about the Giants and their situation, in case you missed it. Giants defensive coordinator Patrick Graham was on a lot of people's radar. Decided that he wants to stay in New York for another year, and that's rare. It's rare that a guy that is hot on radars to become a head coach decides, you know what, I had fun this year, and I'd like to get a little bit more seasoning, and you know what, I think I want to stay and be a defensive coordinator for another year. Now, we've seen offensive coordinators do that, i.e. in New England with Josh McDaniels a bunch of times, and we've seen other guys like Eric Bieniemy. I don't think his was by choice, but more by force, but you know, even going back a way, Sean Payton turning down the Raiders job to go back to Dallas to stay under Bill Parcells, because Parcells told him, don't take that job. You're a good guy. You're a good coordinator. Another job will come up. And he ultimately stayed an extra year and got the Saints job the next year. And the rest is history. We've seen guys do that before, but I was shocked, you know, to hear Patrick Graham say, yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you guys are interested in me, but I'm going to go back to New York. Good for him. Good for that Giants defense, because Patrick Graham was one of the big revelations this year as a defensive coordinator. Him and Brandon Staley in Los Angeles with the Rams were two of the bigger revelations as first-year defensive coordinators that were fantastic this season. He's staying in New York as the defensive coordinator is Patrick Graham. Jets, non-committal on Sam Darnold, as they should be, okay? GM Joe Douglas says, and I quote, a lot of decisions to make, and he's right. And part of that in that quote was Joe Douglas pretty much saying, I want to be able to make a decision on a head coach first, and then allow him to decide if he wants to keep Sam Darnold and build around him or draft his own guy. To me, that's the smartest thing to do. You know, don't bring a guy in here and say, hey, you're stuck with Sam Darnold whether you like him or not. It's not the right thing to do. Nobody wants a gun put to their head. And you don't want to eliminate really good candidates because you want Sam Darnold and they don't. You know, you don't want a guy to say, hey, I don't think Sam's the right guy for what I want to do. I see a couple of guys in the draft that I think would fit what I want to do perfectly. And you're like, well, we're keeping Sam, so if you don't want Sam, you don't want this job. You don't want to do that. You want to hire the guy because you feel like we share the same vision for this organization, and I think this is the right guy to lead this football team. So if you're the Jets and you're Joe Douglas, the GM of the Jets, I think the right thing to do is hire the head coach first and let that coach tell you how he feels about Sam Darnold. And if he says, nah, I'm good on Sam, you can go ahead and move him. And you move him. And you draft a quarterback and you move forward that way. So I just thought that was interesting that they're non-committal. I don't think that it says anything about whether they're going to move him yet or not. I just think that's the smart thing to do. Some of the best news that I've seen all day. Dave Gettleman back in New York as the GM. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Yeah, buddy. We did it. We did our part. If you're a Washington football team fan, we did our part. Contribution made. Job well done, Giants. I feel good, you know. I feel like how I felt when I voted this past November. I did my part. All I could do was smile. I felt like I did something to contribute to change. In this case, I did my part. We let the Giants sweep us so that they could get ever so close to winning the division, and Giants brass decide that Dave Gettleman is the man for the job yet again. There's a sense of achievement. Feels good. Feels good. Feels good. Oh, maybe next year, Giants fans. Maybe next year. I love it. Someone had asked me about college coaches last pod and who would be some candidates that might be making the jump. And I told you maybe one guy, maybe two at the most, but normally it's just one usually that makes the jump. Matt Rule was that guy last year. The year before that, it was Cliff Kingsbury. You generally don't get more than one college guy a year, but just because the question was asked, I said, I'm going to go do a little bit of digging and find out what guys are interested in making the leap and what teams might actually be interested in some of these collegiate guys. So Jim Harbaugh, ex Indianapolis Colts quarterback, ex San Francisco 49ers head coach, may be interested to returning to the NFL. And that seat's hot at Michigan. That seat's hot. Feeling hot, hot, hot. It's hot. They went 2-4 this year, and they were awful. And he hasn't beaten Ohio State since he got to Ann Arbor. So, needless to say, now there's been reports that, I think last week I saw a report that he was close to signing an extension to stay at Michigan. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And then I'm hearing, hey, Jim's a little interested. There's a couple of openings and, somebody might come calling and Jim might be like, hey, I'm ready to come back. I've always said Jim Harbaugh, for me, is the Larry Brown of NFL coaches, or just coaching in general in football. I don't know if you know who Larry Brown is. If you're a basketball, and you're probably got to be a little bit older to know who Larry Brown is, but hell of a coach, hell of a teacher. But never stays anywhere longer than 3 or 4 years. He just, for whatever reason, he wears thin on people. He gets bored. He wants a new challenge, whatever the case may be. Jim Harbaugh wears thin on people after a while, which is why I think college is where he needs to be. I don't think what he does, is going to last. I don't think it has staying power in the NFL in one location. So, that message gets stale, and the way he coaches kind of rubs people the wrong way. I just don't see him working in the NFL long term. He's not going to be a Mike Tomlin where he's around for a decade plus, or a Bill Belichick, or his brother for that matter, John Harbaugh. I just don't see him as that guy. In college, you get that turnover where guys are there 3-4 years, maybe 5, but they're gone, and you get a fresh set of guys in there, and you're cycling these guys in and out. And so even if that message becomes, starts to get stale, or you start to rub guys the wrong way, they're gone anyway after a while. And a new set of guys come in. So, I don't know. I'm just saying. We'll see. I don't think he's going anywhere. He could return to the NFL, but I think Michigan, he wants to make it work at Michigan. I think he feels like there's unfinished business there. There's a lot of unfinished business at Michigan. Anyway, speaking of Harbaugh, though, he's not the only college coach that's getting a little bit of attention from the collegiate ranks. Here are a couple of other names. We talked about Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern already on the last podcast. That's a name to keep in mind and consider. Urban Meyer, we talked about him. There's been conflicting reports on how interested he is, and he didn't demand $12 million a year, and he did, and he didn't. It was just the Jacksonville job initially. Now the Chargers are reportedly interested. Who knows what the hell's going on with that Urban Meyer situation. We'll keep tabs on it. I don't think anything comes of it. I think he remains on the Fox Sports broadcast this fall, but we'll see what happens there. Another name to watch out for is Dan Mullen of Florida. He's another guy that teams are interested in. Specifically, the Jets had contacted him just to check the temperature there to see how interested he was to maybe making the leap. They haven't interviewed him or anything, or even requested one. They just reached out to see if he was interested in potentially interviewing and making that leap, if they needed to circle back around. If they didn't find a guy, if they interviewed 6 dudes and none of them kind of fit, then, oh yeah, what about Dan? Let's go back and check him out. That's kind of how they were checking the temperature with him. Honestly, none of these guys, I think, are going to end up coaching in the NFL this year. I think all of the hires are going to ultimately be guys that were in the league in 2020 in some capacity. But we'll see. I could be wrong there. That's something we'll keep our eye on. I just heard this today. I missed this one. I think this one kind of went under the radar for me. Maybe not some of you, but Drew Brees expected to retire after the season. That's not a surprise. You get banged up ribs and the season didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. And you're getting to the point now, I'm too old for this shit. It's one thing if I'm healthy like Brady and I'm not getting beat up, but it's another thing when I'm getting, broken ribs and almost punctured lung, and they're like, okay, all right, enough is enough. All right, too old for this shit. I got little boys. But, there's a broadcasting job at NBC already lined up for him if he were to retire, which is not surprising either. But, it's interesting to hear because Drew Brees retiring, it's just hard for me to fathom this league without the old farts. Brady and Brees and all of these Roethlisberger and Rodgers and I've been trying to pass the torch for the last 3 or 4 years, and these guys Rivers, they just won't go away. But we might be getting rid of a couple of these dudes. Rivers looks like he's got 1 foot out of the door. Brees looks like he may have 1 foot out of the door. Brady's not going anywhere. I don't think Roethlisberger is either. Rodgers has still got a lot of football left in him. But, it's amazing that just feels like these guys won't go away. Maybe we might actually see a couple. And you're going to miss them when they're gone, by the way. But, and I honestly don't know who we're handing the torch off to. I thought it was going to be Watson and Wentz. And, I thought it was this new group. Andrew Luck. Well, Luck's retired. Wentz is having a mental breakdown or a physical breakdown, however you want to, describe it. Watson definitely looks like he might be the leader of the new school. Is Russell Wilson able to be in that group, or is he too old for that group? He's kind of in the middle, right? Like, he's 30. I don't know. It's hard. They're not a bunch of young quarterbacks with 2 or 3 bona fide stud years under their belt where you go, okay, yeah, he's a part of the new wave. Maybe Kyler Murray, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, speaking of Wentz may not want out of Philly after all. There was a report. First of all, did you guys hear what Miles Sanders had to say about head coach Doug Peterson's decision to bench Jalen Hurts on the Sunday night game? He said, look, we were all kind of confused and baffled as to why he did it. You could tell that the players didn't agree with that. And that's the one thing I could say. I was talking to my dad on the phone, and he was like, I felt bad for the players. my dad's a Cowboys fan. He's like, I really could give two shits who won the game because we weren't going to the playoffs anyway. But I felt bad for the players. You could tell they were on the sideline kind of dejected, and you could see it. They showed Kelsey and some of the other offensive linemen, their head down after the fumble by Nate Sudfeld. And they were like, what is coach doing, man? We out here busting our ass trying to win this game, and he's going to do that shit? So there were some players that were frustrated there, and he may have lost the locker room with that decision. We'll see. Anyway, Wentz may not be out of Philly after all. He's like, hey, maybe we can reconcile our differences and we can fix this thing, because I don't think he wants to leave. And I'm like, hey, Carson, buddy, sounds good. And you know how they do, like, hey, Carson, what's going on, my man? Hold on one second. Hey, can you get the Indianapolis Colts on the phone? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Frank Wright. No. Chris Ballard, get the GM. Yeah. All right, cool. Hey, Carson. Yeah, man, come on in. Man, we love you. We think we can fix this, man. Yeah, I don't know what happened this year, but look, you're my guy. We love you. This city loves you. We think you can get the job done. All right, Carson. Go have a great off-season, man. Enjoy your spring, and we'll see you back here for minicamp. Did you get him on the phone yet? Okay, all right. 5 minutes? Cool. I think his ass is gone. He may not want out. I think he wants out. I think he's trying to save face. I think he's like, hey, I don't want to look like an ass here. I don't want to look like I'm forcing my way out of here. I think it's a clean break is coming for all parties involved. That's what this feels like. We'll see. Anyway, last thing on the list. Washington football team, according to Adam Schefter, most natural spots for Cam Newton this offseason if he were to be not re-signed in New England. He's not going to be re-signed in New England. And newsflash, Adam, I'm not going to allow you to connect dots that don't connect anymore. Just because Ron Rivera had a relationship with Cam Newton, and Ron Rivera has talked very profusively about Cam Newton and not, going and betting against Cam Newton and all of those things, doesn't mean that he's looking to try to salvage what's left of Cam Newton's career in Washington. I don't see that happening. I honestly don't. Ron didn't give him, if Ron was so in love with Cam Newton, he would have given him an opportunity this offseason. And I know Dwayne was here and he wanted to give Dwayne a clean slate and a fresh shot and not have to worry about looking over his shoulder. But if he really felt like Cam Newton could still play, it could give them something, he could have signed him this offseason. Nobody else wanted him. He was out there. And Cam signed for a paltry $1.1 million. He could have been in Washington for $1.1 million. Wouldn't anything stopping Ron from making that move? You tell me that after watching Cam Newton this season and watching the train wreck that was Cam Newton, the worst passer rating in the entire league, a guy that has looked abysmal and has been benched 3 or 4 times at different spots this season, you're telling me that's the guy that Ron Rivera is going to go out of his way to sign this offseason? Give me a break. I think you're connecting dots here that just simply don't connect. It's low-hanging fruit. I won't stand for it. And if he's here in Washington, I'll come back and I'll offer up a double O, but I'll be pissed while I'm doing it because I want no parts of Cam Newton. He's done in my mind. He's done. But we'll see what happens. I don't think he's a great fit for the offense that we run or any of that stuff. I just think that Washington needs to go in a totally different direction than Cam Newton this offseason at the quarterback position. But we'll see what happens. That's all I can say. Anyway, let's get to some social media maneuvers, shall we? Let's get to some comments real quick. And again, if you're out there, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comments read on the air. Super chat if you want to jump to the front of the line. And let's get this party started. Let's see where we're at. And I do want to promote this. What's good, DMV Sports Zone. I will be live tonight on DMV Sports Zone's channel on YouTube at, I believe, 7:30. Don't get me wrong. Don't give me the line. I believe it's 7:30 tonight. Excuse me. On his channel on YouTube, we'll be talking about the Washington football team's playoff chances And we'll be talking about all kinds of ball, all kinds of playoff football tonight on the show. Looking forward to doing that and chopping it up over on DMV Sports Zone's channel. So you guys, if you haven't subbed him up, go over there, give him some love, sub him up, turn on your notification bell so you don't miss when we go live or when he goes live from here on out. And look forward to chopping it up with you guys later on tonight over on DMV Sports Zone's channel. Got a comment here from my man Ree. Ree writes, "It's on, Lou. Like the break of dawn. Our teams are going to have a good old-fashioned melee. This will be payback for our collapse at the Capitol all those years ago. Hashtag, I don't like that." He's been talking about that Jordan Reed game that you like that game from Kirk. 24 to, I think, what was it, 24 to nothing? I think it was 24 to nothing. And we came back and won that football game against Tampa Bay. He's been talking about that one for years. Still hasn't quite gotten over it, obviously. So it should be a lot of fun, man. Like I said before, it's amazing that every time we get in the playoffs, it's one of two teams that we run into over the last, 25 years or so. It's either Tampa Bay or Seattle. It seems like every single time. 2015 was the one time we didn't run into one of those two teams at some point. We played the Packers in 2015, but in 2012, we ran into Seattle. In 2007, we ran into Seattle. In 2005, we ran into Tampa first and then Seattle. And in 1999, we ran into Detroit and then Tampa. So we always run into one of those two teams, and it should be a lot of fun. Nobody's giving us a chance, and that's the way we like it in Washington. Reese says, "This will be fun, Lou. No one I'd rather face off with in the first round than my old buddy." It's going to be a lot of fun, man. It's going to be a ton of fun. Ton of fun. I can't wait. Bart Scott. Can't wait. Hassan Moore says, "I'm pumped for this game, bro. I want these Bucks. I want Tom Brady." Be careful what you wish for, as good old Bruce, Uncle Bruce said at his presser yesterday. Let's see. Hassan Moore says, "Do you think Logan Thomas is a number one and elite next year?" I'm still not on the Logan Thomas is a number one tight end bandwagon, although I will say I feel more confident now than I ever have been before in his abilities and in Washington's decision to sign him. And I'll take it a step further. I feel even more good about the potential of Washington saying, "Hey, he's our number one guy," and just adding another tight end to the mix that's, not necessarily what I was looking for as a true number one stretch the football field, threat. But if they just add another guy and say, "Nah, Logan's our dude," I'm cool with that. I wasn't before, I am now. I still think that Logan's a high-end number two. But his production this year says, it screams, not says, it screams number one tight end. So we'll see. Ali Side says, "Lou, I got a TD for you. Who should the Raiders hire? Joe Barry, Raheem Morris, Wade Phillips, or Gus Bradley?" I would not hire Joe Barry. I've had experience with him. You don't want any parts of that. You can't go wrong, I don't think, with Raheem, Wade, or Gus. I think all three of those guys are excellent defensive coordinators. Raheem Morris does a great job relating to players, and he knows the game in and out. Like this, I've never seen a coach do the things he's done. This is a guy that's coached both the offensive and defensive sides of the football, and he did it once in the same year. Like, he knows football. He knows ball. Wade Phillips is an old, grizzled veteran that you know what you're getting. All right? Old Uncle Wade. We know what you're getting out of Wade. But I'd say, for me, it'd probably be between Raheem and Gus. Those would be the two I would choose from. I'd probably lean towards Raheem, but I'm biased. But Gus Bradley, I think, is an excellent defensive coordinator as well. Hassan Moore says, "Did you hear?" Yeah, I did hear about that. Does that shock you? Reese says, "My worst case scenario has come true. Your team likes to torment me, Lou. I didn't want anything to do with y'all in the playoffs." I remember you telling me, "I don't want to play y'all," like a month and a half ago. And I was like, yeah, we'll see. Like, it's a lot of football left to be played. I don't think we're going to end up playing each other. And here we are. So we'll see what happens. EJ says, you heard about Kelvin Harmon being at practice? No, I didn't. But it's not like he's playing or anything like that. So, it is what it is. I want to see what he has, it sucked that 2020 got ripped from him because, here we are talking about we need this and that at receiver. How do we know we don't already have it? We don't know. We don't know what we have in Kelvin Harmon. We don't know what we have in Antonio Gandy Golden. We don't really know what we have at receiver. We just know we need to add another part. That's how we feel. Protect Sports says, bro, the fact that you didn't catch the 19 is a blessing from God, no doubt. It is. Honestly, I still don't know how we didn't get it. But, we weren't supposed to get it. And I thank God for that every day. Every day. Asan Moore says, stay safe out there. We don't want you to get this, bro. We love you, man. Same here. Love you guys. Don't want to see any of you guys impacted by the Rona either. So you guys stay safe out there. Seriously. Reese says, this pass defense is straight booty hole, Lou, especially without Devin White. We're at a disadvantage there. I'm aware. I know all of the holes in this defense. I know all of the things that you guys, all the challenges, first of all, that you bring with a fast, free-flowing, aggressive defense with talent. But I also know the impact of a Devin White and him not being in the lineup brings to the table. And so I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't excited that he wasn't going to be able to play in this game because of what he can do. And I watched him blitz Matt Ryan a few weeks ago, and I said, I don't want any parts of that. I don't want any parts of that, especially with Alex Smith being a sitting duck if he's playing. I don't want any parts of that. Rich says, I got to SEFE at the time because my friend told me about him and he covered the league a lot. So I watched him. Then you mentioned your favorite team and I went straight to, he mentioned your favorite team. And I went straight to your channel. Okay. Again, you never know how somebody ends up here. I never know that. I just know you got here and I'm happy that you're here. So it's cool to hear the story of how you ended up here. Reese says, I hope Logan Thomas doesn't pull a Jordan Reed on me. You know what I'm talking about. I already brought it up. Ree. JP says, Falcons owner Arthur Blank said this morning that Matty Ice and Julio are not untouchable this offseason. I know Ryan has had a bad playoff reputation, but I'd like to have him. Arthur Blank making that declaration isn't saying much. We already knew that those guys were available. He had already stated that nobody was safe, that, when he hired the next general manager and head coach, they were going to be able to make the decisions as to the direction of this football team. And so if those guys come in and say, we want to start fresh, Falcons have the 4th pick in the draft, we want to draft a quarterback, and we want to draft, and we got a young receiver already in Calvin Ridley that we think is awesome, and we're going to draft another guy later on in the draft to go along with him, then those guys would become expendable. Julio's been breaking down of late. His body's starting to break down on him a little bit, it feels like, and Matty Ice, he's still good, but I don't, he's 35 years old, 35, going on 36, and he's got a massive deal. He's still playing good football, but I'm good. Brian says, are you live? You ready for the Washington football team? Of course I'm live. I'm all the way live. I'm all the way live. I'm all the way live. Of course I'm live. I don't know, J Mart. I can't help you there, brother. I consume the NBA, but I'm not an NBA guy, so I can't help you. I can't help you there. Kevin the PRF says, I'm starting to warm up to the idea of watch the football team to just go after a vet like Stafford hard. # the time is now. I don't know about that. We'll see. Rich says, let me drop a gem on your melon, Lou. This stat came straight from the dome piece. Tom Brady is 0-3 against NFC East teams in the postseason. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. I understand that. I understand that. This is a different season. This is a different team, but I am well aware of that. Darren Nicholson says, I was watching the NFL YouTube channel for the Washington football team versus Bucks game, and I'm a Washington football team fan, and about 10 to 15 sport reporters said that the Bucks are winning by 15 plus points. How do you feel? I don't feel anything by that. I told you that we weren't getting any respect. I told you that when we won the game, the night that we did the video on overtime. I told you that the next day on Washington Football Nightly. And I'm going to continue to repeat that all week long, that no one's given us a chance. We didn't earn any respect by the way we won against the Eagles. If we wanted respect, we needed to dirtbag the Eagles on Sunday night. We needed to beat them 27-10 and not make it close. We went in there and we gave an undermanned Eagles team a chance to beat us. And we're 7-9, and most people haven't been watching us this year. And they know Chase Young and they know about this defense, but they don't know about this team. They don't know about the heart of this team. They don't know about our second half defense and how we play. They don't know anything about us. They just know that we stink and that the Buccaneers have been scoring 1 million points over the last 3 weeks, and that they're going to run us because we can't score. Okay, we'll see. What's up, Toano? Assam Moore says, there's another stat that will blow your mind. The Bucks are 1-3 at games played at 8 o'clock. We talked about that already this year, about them struggling on prime time. Look, I'm not going to feed into that. I don't know if there's anything to that stat or not. How about the teams they played at 8 o'clock? I don't know. I mean, look, the Giants aren't a good team, but the Giants play defense. And if you can get pressure on Tom Brady, you can affect Tom Brady. And that's the thing, is that every team they played in those windows, they can get pressure on the quarterback, and they did, and that's what affected them. So we'll see what happens. J Mart says, since we can't get a top 5 quarterback, do we still go with a quarterback in round 1? Sure, why not? Just because you don't get a top 5 pick doesn't mean you can't draft a quarterback. Rich says, I know you've seen the Cam Newton stuff. He better be a backup if here at all. Yeah, I saw it. I brought it up already. I don't want any parts of him, backup or not. I don't want Cam Newton anywhere near this franchise. JP says, per Shefty, Bieniemy apparently interviewed for every job except Houston. Sorry, not the Jets. Houston is the only team that didn't even contact him. If that's true, the Texans might be the last vacancy to be filled. We'll see what happens with them. I think they're very smitten with Joe Brady in Carolina. They seem to be really, really impressed by him and his interview. We'll see what they decide to do. Kevin the PRF says, why do these owners wanting offensive-minded head coaches? We had one. He sucked as a head coach. These owners should just want a no-nonsense head coach and just want the right offensive-minded OC. Look, at the end of the day, it's a passing league. It's an offensive league. That's why they want offensive-minded guys. You're looking to draft a young quarterback and then marry that young quarterback with an offensive mind. I've already explained this whole dynamic to you guys. Everyone's looking for the Sean Payton, Drew Brees type of relationship, where you get the young offensive-minded head coach, like they did with Sean Payton back when he was fresh out of Dallas back in like 2007, I believe, is when he ended up in New Orleans, and Drew Brees ended up there, and it might have been 2006, whatever the case may be. And you marry that young offensive-minded guy with a young quarterback, and they make beautiful music for you for the next decade plus. That's what everybody's looking to do. Does it always work out? No, it doesn't always work, but that's what they're looking to do. So that's why teams do what they're doing. They're looking for that offensive-minded guy that can pair with their quarterback. They want Brady and Belichick, even though Belichick's not an offensive-minded guy. They want a coach and a quarterback duo for many years to come. And usually the best way and the easiest way to do that is to get an offensive-minded guy that is in sync with the quarterback. So that's why you're seeing a lot of teams turn in that direction. HHC Lunar says, who of the fired NFL coaches could get a second NFL job? So let's look at the coaches that were fired. And those guys are Doug Marrone, Adam Gase, Matt Patricia, Dan Quinn, Bill O'Brien, Anthony Lynn. Of that group, Doug Marrone has already been a head coach twice. So I don't think he's going to get a third opportunity right now. I'm not saying that he won't get another opportunity down the road, but he's not getting an opportunity anytime soon. Adam Gase, this was his second job as well. He was just abhorred. All right. He was just absurdly bad at both spots. I don't see how anybody could even entrust him with another opportunity. So I don't see him getting another job. Matt Patricia was terrible in Detroit. Don't see him getting another job. Dan Quinn is interesting, but I don't see him getting a job. Bill O'Brien definitely going to have to either go to the college ranks or sit out a while before his name even comes up for an OC job. And Anthony Lynn, for me, is of that group the guy that's going to get another sniff. I think he's well respected. A lot of things, befallen him in Los Angeles with that Chargers organization. I think a lot of people respect him, and I think he'll be the guy that gets another opportunity. JP says, I don't understand why Watson stayed in Houston long term. They clearly don't want to win and plan for the future, and their culture is a hot, steaming pile of shit. He didn't know that Bill O'Brien was going to do what he did to just absolutely blow up that entire franchise. He didn't know that they were going to trade DeAndre Watson. All of those guys were still DeAndre Hopkins. He didn't know he was going to trade him. He didn't know he was going to do some of the things that he did on his way out. So he didn't know. He didn't know what he was getting himself into. I'm pretty sure if he could do it all over again, he may not have signed that extension. But guess what? Houston wasn't going to just allow him to walk. And he probably views that as his franchise. Houston is home for him now. That's his team. He helped build that city. So he wants to be there when they win, probably. Kevin the PRF says, I feel like Eric Bieniemy is that current guy owners bring in just because they have to. Not a testament to Bieniemy or his peers, just the owners. There is a Rooney Rule element to that, to fulfill that. But I think there's a growing sense around the league that, look, somebody needs to give this guy a job. Like, this guy's brilliant. I've heard this in the past. I can't confirm nor deny this, but his interviews haven't been great. That's why he hasn't gotten a job yet. And that may be the case. And some guys maybe just don't interview really well. But if you can't explain your vision to the owner and get him to see what you are going to do for him and his organization, it's hard for them to pull the trigger and make you the next head coach of that team. Kevin the PRF says, don't forget our contribution in helping Daniel Jones remain the guy in New York for the Giants. We've done that as well. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I don't think Daniel Jones is absolutely garbage. I don't think he's great, but I don't think he's terrible. Not like Dave Gettleman, at least. I'd like to not contribute to him continuing to stay in New York. I'd like to actually beat him. Now, I'll do whatever I need to do to keep Dave Gettleman in New York, but I'm tired of losing to the Giants too. So I'm glad we were able to add to the Dave Gettleman stay in New York fund. I'm glad we were able to contribute to that. And we had a large donation, the largest of anybody. So I was glad we were able to contribute, and do our part and help him get reelected in Dallas. My name is Louie T, and I approve this message. HHC Lunar. Giants are not winning more than 2 games in 2029 with the worst GM and quarterback in the league, not to mention a lame duck head coach. I disagree with that statement vehemently. I love their coach. He's not a lame duck. I don't think their GM and quarterback are the worst in the league. I do think their GM is close to the worst in the league, and their quarterback is not anywhere near the worst in the league. So, and if they won 6 games with this group, without Saquon Barkley, without a number 1 wide receiver who they're going to draft this year, if they did that with the group they had last year, they're going to win more than 2 games. JP says, bruh, Dave Ghetto fat ass is the effing worst. And we had Bruce Allen for God knows how long. I'm not calling any names. I just know he sucks. And as long as we can keep him in New York, I'm all for it. Let's see. Where we at? Right here. Rich says, brought this to Protect's attention last night. In the offseason, we need a mega roundtable. Protect you, Rico, Ed, Skins, Pedro, Juan, everybody. We need it for the culture. We'll see. Everybody's got different schedules. It's tough to get everybody on at once. We'll see what happens. Kevin the PRF says Wentz just doesn't want to lose his money. Well, that money isn't going anywhere. He signed that contract. He's getting his bread. That money isn't going anywhere. As long as he's under contract, he'll get his bread. That money isn't going anywhere. Brian Horst says, how did you become a Grizzlies fan? That's a long story, bro. Not for today's pod, but at some point, run that back in the off season when we ain't talking about shit. And I'll sit down and I'll have Louie T story time for you. Okay. JP says, Ree versus Lou, the matchup of the century. It should be fun, man. We've been waiting for this for a long time in the postseason. Kevin the PRF says, what if question of the day? He said, pick one offensive and defensive Redskin in history to add to the roster this weekend. I would pick Joe Theismann for the offense. Lord knows we need a quarterback. Or maybe even, I didn't watch Sammy Ball. I know you set all these records, but he played in the 1930s and 40s. I mean, how good could he actually be from an athletic standpoint? Maybe I heard he was a tremendous athlete. I mean, if he is as advertised and he could play in this era, I'd probably go with slinging Sammy Ball. But I'd go with Joe Theismann because I actually did see him play. And on the defensive side, that's tough. That's really tough because, I'd love to bring Sean Taylor back, resurrect him, and pluck him into this defense. But then again, I'm like, man, what Darryl Green wouldn't do for this defense, or, what, a Monty Coleman wouldn't do for this defense, or Wilbur Marshall wouldn't do for this defense. I'd probably say give me Darryl Green, though, because he's a lockdown corner. And what you can do in this league with shutdown corners transcends everything else other than edge rusher. So give me Darryl Green because I know I could lock down the side of the field. And if need be, I could throw him back there on punts. Lord knows we could use one of those, too, a dynamic punt returner. So give me Darryl Green on the defensive side and give me Joe Theismann on the offensive side. Brian Horst says, who's your upset pick in the first round? I can't give you that today. That's some Friday information, Brian. Come on, man. You over here trying to violate on a Wednesday. JP says, the worst thing you can give Washington right now is motivation. They thrive and feed off of it better than any other team in the league. I don't know about better than any other team in the league, but nobody's looking to give out bulletin board material. The Buccaneers certainly haven't given out anything. The media, that's their job to predict winners and losers, and I don't know if that's necessary. Look, whether they picked us to win or not, Ron was going to use the underdog card anyway. So that was going to happen regardless. JP says, I smell a Washington upset, Lou. As long as Washington's offense doesn't puke all over itself, we have a shot. We might get a defensive score or two. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Promise me one thing, JP. I just need you to promise me this. No matter what happens, if we lose, and let's say we don't play well and we lose the game 37-10. Just don't come on the show afterwards. This is the worst organization in the world. I can't believe I thought this team was going to win. We suck. Just don't do that. That's all I ask, okay? That's it, okay? All right, because you've done a total 180 from, I think, the Panthers game. So, I could see an upset, though. We'll see what happens. JP says, it honestly took until today for our division title to sink into my mind. After we sat through 3-13 last year, we deserve this shit. To hell with 7-9. I just wanted to be in the dance, and we're here. That's the good thing about that. Jordan Jones says, I still can't get over the fact that your former co-worker really said, do I start Aaron Rodgers or Tony Ramo? Hey, look, man, that's what fantasy football be out here promoting in these streets, man. That's why I said, look, you got to understand what you're getting yourself into with this fantasy football stuff. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, man. Mike Lowry said, what about Jacoby Brissett? He's really good and not being used. Jacoby Brissett's okay. He's not really good. He's okay. He's cool. Brian Horst says, what do you think about if Washington drafted Alabama quarterback Mac Jones? I got to watch tape on him. You know, from what I've seen, really solid dude, limited mobility, good arm, played with a ton of talent, which, you know, it's not a crime in college football. Justin Fields plays with a ton of talent. all the Oklahoma quarterbacks that have been drafted and won the Heisman played with a bunch of talent. Tua played with a ton of talent. Joe Burrow played with a ton of talent at LSU. It's not a crime to play with talented football players, but you got to be able to see that it wasn't just the talented football players that made him good. You have to see that he's special in his own right. I got to watch the film to be able to tell you that. Brian says, does Alex get the start? We'll see. He didn't practice again today. Taylor Heineke took all the first team reps, so we'll see what happens. Kevin the PRF says, I thought we hated Bostic. Did you catch Law Nation break down every tackle to prove Jalen Smith sucks? Nope, I didn't see that. But hey, look, I haven't been paying attention enough to be able to say that he doesn't. I just know he's an athlete. I know he does take some poor angles. I know he does pick the wrong gap a lot of times. But he's an athlete. You can do things with guys like Jalen Smith. But we'll see what happens. He would know better than me, again. And as far as John Bostic is concerned, I told you I don't have a John Bostic problem on the roster. I just have a problem with him starting. But we can't do anything about that right now. So it is what it is. JP says, call me crazy, but I don't see Philly being any good next season. They've had an under 500 record since their 2017 Super Bowl run, and their coach and GM are absolutely clueless. I won't count anybody in this division out for any reason, because this division, as we've seen, is dysfunctional at times and really hasn't been good in like 3 years. So I'm not going to count anybody out. Kevin the PRF says, you got to go watch old tape of Ball. He was Steve Young with a better long ball. I'll take your word for it. I really will. Brian says, Sammy Ball was ranked 14th on the top 100 of all-time Hall of Famers. Alex will be there too if he wins the Super Bowl this year. Ha, ha, ha. Very funny. Brian Horst says, I was wanting to catch you napping on the upset pick question. I had to try. Of course, the worst I could say was no. You know, you can't, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. All right. JP says, you got my word, Lou. All I wanted was the playoffs. The Carolina loss really had me hot, mostly because of Haskins shitting all over the place. That's all I wanted from you, JP. That's all I wanted to hear. Music to my ears. We're on the same page. Brian says, will Dan ever retire number 21 officially? No, I don't think so. He hasn't really retired any number other than 9 and 33. So I don't think they're going to retire any other numbers. If he hasn't retired Art Monk's number or John Riggins or any of these guys that are in the Hall of Fame's number already, then I don't see him retiring Sean Taylor's number. Hassan Moore says, Ron for Coach of the Year. He's going to get some consideration. I don't think he's going to win, however. So, with that said, let's get to garbage time. And so, I told you guys earlier, and I teased this earlier in the show, that I talked to my dad. I call my dad Boss. So, I was talking to Boss. So, when you hear me say I was talking to Boss, I was talking to my dad. So, I was talking to Boss on Monday, and I asked him about the Dallas game, what he thought, and we talked about that. We talked about the Washington Philly game, and we talked about some other games around the league. And he brought a game up that I hadn't watched, and I had no intentions of watching at all. I had no interest. I saw the score. I knew Kyler Murray got injured. I knew he came back in the fourth quarter, and I was like, I'm good. I'm not gonna watch that game. So I was pissed off because CBS had that game, and that made it blacked it out in my area. So I wasn't able to watch it on my computer. So I was pissed off because I really just wanted to watch that. I wasn't turning to that game over Packers and Bears. Are you crazy? So I was like, I guess I just won't watch it then. Even though I didn't want to watch it. So I saw the final score, and I knew it was two backup quarterbacks. Strebler for the Cardinals and Wofford for the Rams. I'm like, I'm good. I'm gonna pass. 18-7. I'm good. I'm seriously, I'm really good. And then I talked to Boss, and he was like, yo, I think the Rams might be all right if that young boy got to go. I'm like, Wofford? He was like, yeah, he was running, man. I'm telling you right now, his ass was running. I'm like, what was he? How was he throwing the ball? He's like, he wasn't bad, man. I saw him scramble a couple of times, threw a couple of passes, man. They might not be in bad shape with that defense. They might be okay. I'm like, Boss, seriously? He said, look, man, I ain't bullshitting you. I said, all right, man, you didn't convince me. I'm going to go watch this game. I had no intentions of watching this game, none. So I went and watched. John Wofford's first career NFL pass was an interception. But after that, he settled in. And he has some wheels. He can run, as Boss told me. And I watched him throw the ball, and as he got further into the game, and what you have to remember is he hadn't played in the NFL. He hadn't had the experience. And so as he got more and more into the game, he got more and more comfortable, and you could see he started to settle in. And I was like, wow, maybe the Rams might not be dead on arrival if Jared Goff can't play. I'm interested in John Wofford. Now, not like he's a starter or anything like that, but they're not dead because that defense is legit. We know that. And if he can just manage to not turn over, this is interesting. I didn't know this until I watched the game. The Rams turned the football over in every single game this season. Every single one. Not a single game went by without the Rams having at least one turnover. That's hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. Even the worst teams in the league don't turn it over every single game. You know, they may have that game where they turn it over 5 or 6 times. My team's done that multiple times. So I know that can transpire when you're a team trying to figure some things out. But we've also had some games where we didn't turn it over at all. And we were clean, and we played clean football. And the Rams, who won 10 games this year, weren't able to do that once? That's tough. Anyway, long story short, I watched the game, and the Rams aren't DOA all of a sudden. Now, Jared Goff may be able to play. He may be able to play. He may not be able to play on Saturday afternoon. Either way, if John Wofford has to play, and Sean McVay, I saw some things from him that he can do with Wofford that he can't do with Goff that changes the dynamics of their offense. Wofford is a runner. He can move. So the read option and the quarterback keeps and the quarterback draws and student body left, student body right, all that stuff comes into play now that wasn't there with Jared Goff. So it changes how you have to defend them. Just another wrinkle, something else to think about. And oh, by the way, as the game progressed, he got better at throwing the football. He got better at seeing what the defense was doing and finding the open receiver. I'm just saying the Rams aren't dead, even if Jared Goff can't go, because John Wofford isn't trash. And so that was my takeaway, and we'll see what happens. It definitely changes my decision-making process in regards to that game. It was, if Jared Goff can't go, the Rams are dead. Not exactly. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you guys, and that's how we're going to wrap up the 127th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys out there for joining me, and I greatly appreciate your contribution to today's show on social media maneuvers. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys in the near future. I will be over on DMV Sports Zone's channel tonight, so check me out there, check his channel out, and if you like what you see, sub it up. And then I'll be live on Thursday night. So I'm doing the circuit, man. I'll be live on my channel Thursday night for Washington Football Overtime, as we will deep dive into the Tampa Bay matchup on Saturday and get ready for that. And we'll answer any questions that you guys have about the offseason, in the upcoming game, and anything else you want to talk about. So I look forward to chopping it up with you guys there. And of course, we'll be back on Friday with all the picks for the wild card weekend matchups. It should be a dandy. All right, 6 games this weekend, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. Bart Scott, can't wait. So with that said, I'm about to glide to the side, allow you guys to enjoy the rest of your afternoon. If you haven't already done so, what you're waiting on, hit that subscribe button. All right, hit that notification bell too while you're at it, so you don't miss a thing. When I go live, you know I'm going live. And also, if you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button. It's 120 of you out there. I only got 42 likes. Why do we have to do this every single time? You come in, hit the like button. It's not hard. Okay? Anyway, I thank you guys. Hopefully we can get the likes up to 50, maybe 60 before you guys depart. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. This has been the Louie T Network podcast. Adios. Till Friday.
Louie.